Hi everyone, my name is Reed Alvarado. Good morning and welcome back to another day of promotion. We really hope you enjoyed day one. And as we head into that final day of this conference, we wanted to take a minute to dive into a conversation that captures exactly why we come together at events like this, to build partnerships that hold up when real-world pressure arrives. As I said, my name is Reed Alvarado. I am the Vice President of Major Event Development in Infrastructure and Advisory Services at WSP. So in my role, I have the privilege of helping connect the 70,000 plus industry experts at WSP and partners to the cities and agencies preparing to host some of the world's most iconic events. And while I know this is probably not your first mega event session, probably maybe not even this week, it's a bit of a hot topic these days. We're really aiming to focus on that connective tissue that holds all these stakeholders together. This next decade is shaping up to be what's probably going to be the busiest period for major events in the US market in maybe the 21st century. We're looking at the FIFA World Cup next summer, 2028 Summer Olympic and Paralympic Games. In the early 2030s, a FIFA Women's World Cup, Women and Men's Rugby World Cup, a Dodger parade, maybe 7 between now and then, the way we are going. And keep in mind, it's been over 20 years since we've last staged the global events, except those Dodgers parades, that I was just talking about. And so hosting these events is about more than just the event itself. It's a full system stress test of the region's mobility, safety, energy, and communications ecosystem. And we all know the world we're operating in is evolving very dramatically, as you hear in these sessions. So today, we're going to focus on operational readiness from the lens of transit, security, visitor experience, civic infrastructure, grid resilience, data flow, and interagency response. And we will focus on the stakeholders who make them all work. So fortunately, we've gathered 4 leaders who live this work every day and who collectively represent that full spectrum of stakeholders. So they'll introduce themselves in just a second, but very excited to have the people who help us ensure we keep the lights on, the roads stay moving, the city stays safe, and the system stays integrated. With that, let's get started. Alden will begin with a short introduction from yourself, and then pass it down.
Testing. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alden Bourdonnais. I'm the Deputy Executive Officer at LA Metro in the Department of Public Safety Department. What does that mean? Oversee emergency management, physical security, data analytics and intelligence, and our new Emergency Security Operations Center. Thank you.
Good morning, Jane Goslet from Arup. I lead our operational readiness, activation, and transition business at Arup. We're a design, engineering, and consulting firm and work with many agencies to ensure readiness of major infrastructure or major events.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma Kaplan with the Office of Major Events in the Office of Mayor Karen Bass, and I'm our Operations and Planning Chief. I oversee much of our work on security, transportation, city services, energy and water, and airports.
Good morning, my name is Chanel Parson, and I'm the Director of Clean Energy and Demand Response at Southern California Edison. I have responsibility for transportation electrification, customer solar and storage, as well as our demand response programs.
Perfect, thank you. Could I have a quick round of applause for our panelists? Thank you. All right, so I know I talked about a range of events and one recently that just happened, and I'm going to turn it to you first. And Alden, I'm sure you have some insights here too. But we joke, but we've had 2 Dodgers parades in 2 years, right? And each one is a live stress test of LA's safety, mobility, energy. I just heard one of your colleagues, Alden Conan, talk about half the time we're doing bus bridges, but it seems like during these events we're doing rail bridges, right? Where you lose access to so many of those critical roads downtown, and you still have to get everyone there. So I'm just curious, as we move into closer and closer to these mega events, what are these back-to-back celebrations that are planned at lightning speed, teaching you about kind of the years ahead?
Sure. Thanks, good question. Thanks for having us here today. So between the start of this past year, 2025, and 2028, we'll have 10 major events in Los Angeles. Obviously, we know that includes the World Cup in 2026, the Super Bowl in 2027, the Olympics and Paralympics in 2028, but it also includes a number of other events, the NBA All-Star Game, Women's US Golf Open, and then of course the ones we don't exactly plan for, but we hope happen, and the Dodger Parade is one of those. So I think it was a really actually wonderful thing. Obviously, go Dodgers, we love it. But also from a planning perspective, to be able to go back to back and 2 World Series wins and see what we took from last year and put into this year in the parade planning and the planning for during the games themselves, and how LAPD and Metro and Fire and everybody else anticipated what could happen when we clinched, all of those things. So one thing that I think the 2 back-to-back parades really showed us is how important it is to have really good external partners. And I give a lot of credit to the Dodgers organization for doing a lot of early planning on the parade this year. Adjusting from last year, they moved much more, expeditiously on the front end to say, this is what could happen, this is what this looks like. We took last year's parade route and expanded it to make way for the fact that we think we'll have more people. And that, I think, allowed the city and other partners to do our planning as well in an earlier way, in a more comprehensive way, and really plan for any externality. I'm not saying that it was perfect. I think every event we do, we have to adjust. I know, for example, I think there were some accessibility issues that I think we can take into some of our planning for 2026 and beyond. But it was a real testament to what early planning and what learning from past events can be, because it made it a much, I think, as successful as last year's parade was, this one was even better. And I see some of our Metro friends in the audience, and I want to give them a lot of credit. I don't know if anybody went to the parade. Raise your hand if you went. Okay, more of you should have gone. It was great. But I took Metro on parade day, and I got out at, I think it was Bunker Hill, and some of our friends from the Metro team were there, and the vibes were incredible. I mean, the wait to get out of the station was like 5-10 minutes, and nobody was mad. Everybody was in a good mood. It was organized, it was clean, it was happy, it was joyful. And I really think that's a really good lesson to bring into our major events, that we can do all the planning we want, and it's incredibly important, but we need to reflect, the spirit of Los Angeles and all the work that we're doing as well. And I think we did a good job of that on parade day.
Yeah, thanks so much, Emma. Thank you for just continuing to highlight the kind of coordination that happens. Although I think the station she mentioned is one of the few stations in the country where the access is kind of limited by those high-speed elevators that work really well, but I'm sure they're tested on days like that. So can you speak to not only the interagency coordination, but I'm sure the entire ecosystem within Metro that has to coalesce for success on a day like that?
Well, because, and just adding to what Emma was just speaking to, we're gaining ground on the experience. And it actually went back to the Super Bowl a couple years ago, and the Super Bowl experience, the College National Championship, the Summit of Americas, that was a whole week and a half here in Los Angeles, the Rams Parade, and then everything else Emma mentioned as well, which all of these things are allowing this region to gain experience in real time. I'm big on training and exercising and planning with our different stakeholders. However, nothing beats actual events going on. And if you add in the 10 freeway incident or Hurricane Hillary or Tropical Storm Hillary, if you factor those in, as well as with the fires in January, I mean, we're up to maybe 15 total types of events and incidents where we have to plan. It forces us to forge these relationships with critical infrastructure entities such as Metro, as well as our utility providers, and as well as the city jurisdictions, which all 88 cities to some extent are impacted. So us having this overlay of, as each being our own jurisdiction, we have to be able to come together, sit down, create these plans, identify what our biggest gaps and issues are. We can look at our lessons learned from previous events, take those and be able to enhance our current plans. And then we have to test and train those plans, make sure that we can exercise them to see if there's any additional improvements that we can identify before there's the real event. Then from there, it's, you have to be fluid as water. Because a lot of times there's unexpected things, so the consequence management and looking at what else could go wrong, the contingency planning is critical. So I think those are the main things there.
Yeah, we'll come back to that contingency planning, and he was just telling us about some exciting infrastructure builds in his neck of the woods that I want to hear more about. But Chanel, I would love to hear, from the utility side of the panel. Power reliability is a non-negotiable for any event and just for really our daily lives. So how is SCE approaching grid preparedness and energy resilience to ensure that these events can continue to build on each other for not only the event but for everyday users?
Yeah, like for most critical services, we have an advanced planning group at Southern California Edison. And this advanced planning group is looking at everything we need for all of these major events coming to the Southern California territory. We obviously had a Super Bowl in 2022 that went off well. And our planning timeline starts potentially years before maybe some others do. Because what's really critical is that if we need to make upgrades to the electric grid, some of those upgrades can take years to make. The reason that they take years is it doesn't actually take years to do the work, but sometimes we need permits and siting and licenses, and some of those things take years. Sometimes there's long lead times for the equipment, major transformers, and you order it and you may wait 6-9 months a year to get the equipment in. So there's a really long lead time to get some of these major grid build-outs done. And so for our piece, we look at two perspectives. One, for the sites where the events, the games are actually going to be held, what is the power need for those sites, and do we need to do any grid upgrades to support those stadiums and arenas? And then secondly, we partner closely with our customers, for example, transportation agencies like Metro, to say, what are your plans? Are you doing some building? Okay.
Just a quick reminder to silence phones, please.
So we partner with our customers to find out, what are your plans? Are you adding electric buses, for example? Are you building charging depots? And where do you plan to put them? And then we start to do analyses on our grid to see, do we need to upgrade the grid to accommodate what our customers are doing to support those events? And these things take place years out again. So we get all of the information that we need. For things like the upcoming Super Bowl. We've done a Super Bowl. We don't expect that there's a lot of grid upgrades needed for the next Super Bowl, right? The stadium has already accommodated that. But what we have identified is that for the Olympics, there are different capacity needs for some of these same sites. And so there might need to be some grid upgrades for Olympic events at the same site that weren't needed for like a Super Bowl or a World Cup at the same site. So those are the things that we're doing to make sure that the grid has enough capacity and that we're partnering with our customers to make sure we are helping them execute their projects in time for the major events.
Perfect, thank you. And Jane, I think whether it's Arup, WSP, the whole kind of ecosystem, we're very aware that all of these folks have a day job and then they get these events, and it's like a whole second job on top of that. And I'm just curious, in your experience here in LA and elsewhere, how the private sector kind of plays that role in helping deliver on the planning and overall success of events like these.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Definitely, I think, as you say, it really impacts and stresses and tests the resilience of entire urban ecosystems. So the need to kind of have that integrated planning from the outset, and also just to Emma's point earlier, everyone was kind of proud, that LA proudness in terms of, what is that shared purpose? What are we all working towards? So I think when private and public kind of come together to try and meet and drive towards that common purpose, we can get that integrated planning from the outset. I mean, no pressure, we're trying to deliver a seamless operation under global scrutiny while still maintaining daily city life. So it's not a small feat, and actually we're in the process of developing an operational readiness blueprint for the aviation industry, but the principles still stand. And just yesterday I was writing a section on kind of opening strategies, and what I realized, probably stupidly or naively, was actually for major events we don't have, it's the highest risk. You kind of have a hard opening date and it's a big bang opening. With some infrastructure projects you can really base your opening date on readiness. You can push that date, but with these major events we're not in a position to do that. So that critical planning, the ongoing exercising and testing, decades in the making, is so critical. So private partners can support public agencies by providing the capacity within the teams. We were having a discussion earlier and saying, everyone has a day job. So private partners can help bolster those teams and potentially have access to resources that enable us to do things differently, using different digital technologies, or smarter and much earlier than potentially planned.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely agree that sometimes some of those biggest lessons in major events are seemingly simple, like 20 minutes after you come to them, but it's testing them under the conditions that you're talking about that add that complexity. So diving a little deeper into just communication and coordination, and Emma, would love to hear from you, and then also Chanel and Alden, yes, you guys kind of tackle these communication tools across jurisdictions. The parade, reminded us of how essential that real-time communication and coordination is, and I think you touched on that. But going into our next events, the World Cup is a perfect example, right? The Olympics is happening in venues all across the region. The World Cup, the primary event, is happening in and around the city of Los Angeles, but not in the city of Los Angeles. It's happening in Inglewood. Can you speak a little bit to how you're strengthening those communication ties and systems to make sure that as a region we're communicating effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of last year, Mayor Bass created the office that I'm a part of, the Office of Major Events within the Mayor's office in the City of LA, and she asked Council President Emeritus Paul Krikorian to lead that office as the Executive Director. This office has not existed before, but I think that the mayor saw a hole that existed, which is that there was a lot of planning happening across the mayor's office, across city departments, across our partners, but there was no kind of central hub in which everything was kind of flowing through. And so there was perhaps less efficiency, not as streamlined, duplicate work, all of that. And so she created this office to be the centralized hub. And our charge is to put on safe, successful, fiscally responsible events. And again, these events span the city of Los Angeles, they span our regional partners. The Olympics and Paralympics actually have events all the way in Oklahoma City. So it's not just the region, it's across the country. And I think one of the things that is so critical is keeping those lines of communication open. We can't do anything else if we don't do that. So there are a huge number of bodies that have been created. I'll just speak, for the Olympic and Paralympic Games, since that is the big one. A huge number of bodies that have been created across different entities to streamline that coordination. I'm thinking of things like the GME, the Games Mobility Executives, or the NSSE, which is the Security Planning Initiative led through the U.S. Secret Service. And for something like the NSSE, that's the National Special Security Event designation that we have. We got it quite early during the last administration, and that includes City of LA partners like LAPD and LAFD and LADOT. It includes Metro, it includes SoCal Gas, it includes all of our federal and state partners like Cal OES. It includes our partners in Oklahoma City sometimes. So it's just a huge number of entities working And we need these different bodies in order to get anything done. The Games Energy Council, the Games Water Council. LA 28 has some organizational groups that they've created. So it really requires an all hands on deck effort. And sometimes I think it feels a bit like alphabet soup, like GME, NSSC, GDC, GWC. What does that mean? And it can be confusing, but we need all of those streams working in coordination in order to get anything done. I think everything is made slightly more complicated by being in LA, right? We have the city of Los Angeles. We, of course, have 87 other municipalities within the county. We have the county. We have our regional partners in Orange County. And all of that. And the games are going to be across, city of LA, Pasadena, Inglewood, Anaheim. And that's a very incomplete list. We're lucky that we've had successful games here before, 1932 and 1984. 1984 being the most successful Olympics in the history of the Olympic movement. And so we know how to do this. Of course, LA is bigger now. These games will be bigger. They'll be the largest games ever, the largest peacetime gathering in the history of the world, as they say. No pressure. But because we've done it before, we know we can do it again, and we're lucky that we have partners who are, jumping 2 feet in. Everybody's doing multiple jobs. So yeah, it's a lot.
Thank you. So Alden, I'm sure sometimes you go to bed with NSSC just repeating in your mind. Can you speak a little bit about, when Metro hears that term activated for an event, what that means practically for our transportation system?
Okay, so I'm gonna take it to the boots on the ground level, right? So what Emma just mentioned, that's definitely happening at the high level, the program level. But when you talk about the boots on the ground, as far as the different jurisdictions, how they're communicating and working together, everyone has some type of operations center, whether they call it a security operations center, emergency operations center, but all of these different entities have some kind of coordination center. The key is we may have 20, 30, 40 different operation centers activated simultaneously. Having the resources to have folks, liaisons represented in each of these operation centers is critical. That helps streamline communication when you talk about coordinating with the boots on the ground resources that will be spread across the entire region, especially for the Olympics. But just talk about the World Cup, and I'll give an example. The recent Super Bowl, from the federal all the way down to the local, there was maybe 28 different operation centers, including mine, and being plugged in to see how the NFL Global Security Operations Center work versus the FBI's International Operation, ILC, I forgot what the I stand for, but Interoperable Operations Center, Inglewood's EOC, the City of LA's EOC, Metro Transit, even our utility providers. So from the boots on the ground, having those operational centers functional with liaisons to be able to help streamline communication all throughout the region, and making sure you have the software that's integrated or patched into a laptop or through that op center is critical. So that's how the information is streamlined when you just talk about communication from the command level down to the field level.
Yeah, and Alden, we work with clients across the globe, and Jane, I'm sure you can relate here, that are constantly having to make these decisions about where, resources aren't infinite, time is not infinite, and you just mentioned all these EOCs. I think there's often a question, maybe with the Olympics it's a no-brainer, but with smaller events, medium-sized events, some of the things we're talking about, do I participate in the EOC? Do we host an EOC? Can you speak a little bit to the advantages of multiple simultaneous EOCs, and sometimes some of the cost and the trade-offs there about kind of owning that space versus participating in that space?
Well, first of all, depending on where a special event may take place, that jurisdiction has to own that event because it's in their area. However, it's cascading effects to where, or overlaying jurisdictions. Edison is an example, Metro, City of Inglewood, that's 3 different agencies. One event overlapping area. We all have some level of responsibility when it comes to providing power or providing transit for spectators to get to the venue, compared to the city having to coordinate all of the aspects of everything happening with that event within their jurisdiction. So at the end of the day, everyone has to partake in their role, understanding their function. The great thing is, Metro, we're transportation, which is the essential support function number one, which that's only ESF that we focused on compared to the city. They have upwards of 30, 40 different functions that they have to focus on, including transportation. So when you have these critical infrastructure systems, utilities, transportation, that works with these local governments that have to own all aspects of functions within their city, it allows for us to easily be able to know what our fit is, because I'm walking into the city of LA, I'm representing transportation. They're looking for me to own that space and to coordinate with their LA DOT as an example. So it's there's no really, not really a clash if everyone understands their role and responsibility and able to work together. So it makes it a little easier. Now with two cities, that's a little different. I won't speak to that. I think they know where their city boundaries are at, but for Metro, we have to cross over all of the different jurisdictions, so it makes it a lot easier for transit. But overall, that's how the coordination has to happen, and people owning their space, whether they're participating or activating their EOC. You have to do both.
Perfect. Jay?
Yeah, just picking up on some of the comments Emma made and Alden, I think what is so important is all those entities are kind of involved, but making sure that everyone is quite clear on what that governance structure is, and making sure roles, to your point, Alden, are kind of streamlined, and we're making it efficient for people to make good decisions in the moment. Often, in our experience, what we've seen is people think by scheduling more meetings and talking to each other more and more that we're doing good, but actually we're sitting in those meetings not necessarily fully appreciating what everyone's role is. And so being quite intentional with the fact that in these central kind of coordination centers, that those people need to operate as one organization for that event or series of events. So making sure that those barriers are broken down, that we kind of are intentional with ensuring that people know where the handoffs are, what people's roles are, I think is so important, because otherwise we won't be effective on the day. And what we've also seen is if we keep things consistent and structured in terms of our communication, that people can actually communicate more effectively under pressure, because they're expecting things in a particular way, with a particular style and approach, as opposed to just being quite ad hoc when things are pressurized in the moment.
Yeah, Chanel, I'm curious to turn to you. As I said with Emma, looking at kind of that interplay between jurisdictions, partners, all these things as we look towards the Olympics. How is kind of SCE approaching not only the venues in your own coverage area, but also some of those municipal utilities in the region?
Yeah, so SCE has 50,000 square miles of territory that we serve in southern, central, and coastal California. We do not serve the city of Los Angeles, so that's served by LADWP. We don't serve Pasadena, for example. There's Riverside, so there's a lot of municipal utilities as well. As it relates to planning for the Olympics, we are coordinating with all of the local utilities and municipalities that have events in their service territory to make sure, again, that we can seamlessly pull off this major world event without any hiccups. I'll also add that even though we do not serve for electricity needs the city of Los Angeles, there's a lot of things that if they happen in LA, they'll impact SCE territory, and if they happen in SCE territory, they'll impact LA. And so 2 examples that come to mind is the LAX at the airport. So LAX sits in LA, but it's surrounded by Inglewood, and Southern California Edison serves Inglewood. And so one of the impacts we see, for example, of a lot of the build out of the airport, a lot of the build out of electric transportation is there are a lot of companies that want to locate EV charging stations or even self-driving ride-hailing vehicle stations right around that airport. And so that's driving a lot of the build out that SCE has to do to serve that Inglewood area that is adjacent to the airport. Similarly, shipping ports, the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach are just adjacent to each other. LADWP serves the Port of LA, but Southern California Edison serves the Port of Long Beach. And the ports have significant plans for not just increasing their capacity, but also zero emissions goals and how they want to achieve those goals through electrification. And so it's actually a great thing. It's a big part of my world is helping our customers electrify versus using less sustainable, less healthy fuels to support their operations, but it definitely drives the grid need. So we do a lot of coordination on that big picture planning and kind of prep. And then just to tie in a little bit of what Alden said about, kind of the day of or, event time execution, we do stand up an incident management team. We use the incident command structure, which is a common structure that's used across emergency agencies. So we have an incident commander, and we have some of these roles that Jane was talking about that are common and consistent across all of these teams. So we know who to talk to, who to go to, and there's protocols to make it really easy to communicate when events are actually going on.
Yeah, thank you. And so I think we've been touching on it a little bit, but the future proofing that these events enable, right? And we look at Olympic Agenda 2020 or other components that are helping shape the way the games are. It's less about these mega Olympic parks far on the outlying parts of your city, and more about what we saw in Paris, right? Working these games into the existing fabric, not only for the athletes and the cameras, but for the folks that live there every day. So as we build out EV chargers, or we build out new safety and security infrastructure for transit agencies, Alden, I would love to hear a bit about kind of what are some of those investments we're making. I think you have a very exciting one that came online not too long ago, and how these events are shaping those investments. Are they helping unlocking funding and resources to help complete those at a sooner date? Are they completely happening independently of things like that? But that relationship between investments and the games.
Well, I'll tell you, Metro, we've done a lot of investments over the last 10 years. A number of our projects are planned out 15 years in advance. We just recently opened the Metro Transit Center, which connects LAX, once the People Mover gets open next year, connects LAX airport to the rest of the world, to public transit of Metro. So the MTC, we just opened in July. In April, we had just opened our new Emergency Security Operations Center, $148 million facility that co-locates our Security Operations Center that operates 24/7 with our Emergency Operations Center. What does that do for us? It gives us a place, a home, a headquarters to be able to command and control the safety and security of our passengers on our system. How do we do that? Not just by having this facility, but having the infrastructure invested in that type of infrastructure in the facility. When you talk about interoperable communications, when we have the ability to listen to over 20 plus different 20 different law enforcement first responder agencies through their radio systems. So we have that interoperable communication. We also have mutual assistance with LA RIGS, the LA Regional Interoperable Communication System at the county. So having that ability to hear throughout the region, hear via radio what's happening on our system, having mobile apps that we've invested in where our patrons can utilize our Transit Watch to communicate an incident that's going on in real time that comes to our Security Operations Center, having tracking mechanisms through social media to be able to understand what's happening on our system in real time, or through positive or negative sentiment so we can adjust our deployments and resources based on the feedback from our patrons. Then there's still this other social media aspects as far as surveys and things such as that. But from a technology on the safety and security side, having those types of abilities along with the investment in, we have over 31,000 cameras on our system, live feed on our buses, and we'll be integrating live feed on our trains real soon. Having all of those different capabilities coming into our Emergency Security Operations Center, it gives us the ability to see everything with the radio component, hear everything, understand what our patrons are saying and talking through the Transit Watch app, through social media, and eventually we're having our mobile app through our video management system where we know where our resources are at. So all of our multi-layer resources that has been promoted by Metro, our ambassadors, our contract security, our Metro security, our crisis intervention specialists, our contract law enforcement, LAPD, the sheriffs, and now we're transitioning to our own transit police department that by hiring our chief of police and emergency management, Chief Scott. He's our first police officer, which now we're taking that road of having our own transit police. All of these different resources that make up our safety and security ecosystem, understanding where those resources are at and communicating with those resources allows us to be able to have a proactive response when you talk about calls for service, whether you just lost your dog or you have a criminal type incident going on. We want to have our finger on the pulse of our transit system and our passengers.
And Alden, it's very rare in this industry to be able to really operate from a blank canvas for a space like this. We often are told, okay, here's this room in the basement, 2 floors back from where you actually wanted to operate from and make that work. You were able to really influence every detail of the infrastructure you're operating with today. Down to the number of chairs, right, that you would have for someone in a meeting or different groups. Is there anything for folks maybe not from LA that you would say was critical to your overall success there, Metro's overall success? Anything you would have done slightly differently as you were starting that process?
Well, I will say I've been told now I have an engineering mind with a cop mentality, but I like to just call myself a sponge. Learning from a varies of different folks over the years, the last 20 years being in this industry, I've had a chance to be a sponge and learn from people. On a transit side, different genres of critical infrastructure systems with our city and county partners. So I've taken the time to learn from individuals and cherry pick that best information and then be able to digest it and make it become something real to look at it from a future-proofing standpoint when you talk about planning and infrastructure. So having that engineering background, being able to be a sponge and bring folks in that I can cherry pick information from, it allowed me to look at things with a safety and security lens and actually implement things, systems from a special event standpoint, but also legacy.
Perfect. Jane, I think as we talk about learning and being a sponge, it is such a value from a company like Arup to be able to kind of have that more national, global look. And so I'm just curious, I think with an event like this in any jurisdiction, I think a lot of the Angelinos will relate. Sometimes that meme comes to mind of the 3 Spider-Men all like pointing at each other and not knowing who is going to help take us to the next step. You talked about efficiency in meetings, right, and not assuming that just showing up is enough. Are there any other, whether directly in major events, some of the work we talked about in aviation before, where you really see practical, tactical solutions in making sure that there's clear lines of effort, there's clear communication driving toward success?
Yes, so I think one of the key things, just picking up on the future-proofing component, definitely, I said at the start, kind of that shared purpose, shared vision. So Arup firmly believe that, resilience and legacy should be driving a lot of the decisions we're making, and I think we are moving towards that. And it's not just about delivering the asset or being event ready or game day ready. It is about what we are kind of leaving and the kind of community benefit that we're leaving. So whether that is the fact that we are able to get an awesome, kind of center that we can just stand us the test of time for the next few decades, that is ultimately benefiting our community. So I think, moving away that it's just delivering an asset is so critical, that it's making sure that we're actually delivering agile systems that are able to perform under stress, but then recover quickly and then kind of leave a lasting benefit. Whether that is at kind of an individual airport level, you mentioned LAX, but it's then the cascade of all the other modes and that kind of whole ecosystem that we were talking about from the outset, kind of making sure that, again, I'll just go back to that central purpose and what is the ultimate goal and success we're looking at to achieve and take advantage of the opportunities that these mega events bring to our cities.
Perfect. And I think one thing that's really critical to that success, when we had our prep call, Alden was very nice to attend on his day off, because coming off of the Dodger Parade is a high intensity activity, right? It's a lot of planning. And when we think about, whether it's those really leading the charge or the boots on the ground and the kind of whole network of folks that are responsible for delivery, one thing that sometimes is forgotten is sustaining that momentum, right? And I think I hear a lot of really great tactics going on, but not only sustaining that momentum through the event, but also through the after action. We're talking a lot about iterative solutions that help lead, building on the last event. I'm curious from, any of our panelists, are your after actions growing and changing with the things we're learning from past events, and any things you've learned about keeping that momentum going through that capture process?
Well, I'll start. Metro, we have the most robust training and exercise program in the world. Most agencies do 1, 2, maybe 3 exercises a year. And exercises are tabletop exercises, full-scale exercises, 1 to 3 a year. We do upwards of 28 to 35 exercises annually. Don't ask me how we do it, but it's a program that I installed back in 2012, 2013, and we've been successful over these years. Now, you add on top of that all of these special events that we've been talking about. So now you have these training and exercise plans as well as special events. All of these different events and exercises begats a after-action report. Have they changed or been updated? Yes, they have. What are the outcomes? Increasing your resources, adding additional training, whether it's classroom-based, online-based, instructional-based, video-based. I've just invested in $1 million in a virtual instructional training, where it's a virtual environment of downtown Los Angeles, where you can virtually it's like Grand Theft Auto on steroids, but it puts you in this virtual environment for trains and buses when you talk about different types of scenarios and incidents that happen on our system. Or from a planning standpoint, if you think about what does 1 million people in downtown LA look like, because we experienced that with the Women's March back in 2017. I built a system to be able to virtually see that. I was just talking with the FBI supervisors that I hosted just last week, and concerns that they have when you talk about large crowds in urban areas such as downtown LA. So being able to invest in different types of technology also leads to improvements in your after action report, adding additional trainings, real world. I just sent my staff this morning, there was a guy with a knife at a rail yard in Northern California. And I just forwarded to my team and said, hey, let's add this to our annual exercises next year, because that guy held hostage in the Bay Area at a rail yard. It prevented those trains to come out for BART. So what does that do? It's not just an incident for the employees that's working there and the first responders, but those trains didn't get out. So that disrupted hundreds of passengers just being able to get to work who depend on that line day in and day out. So all of these different incidents or events has cascading effects. And as we were talking about with planning, Emma brought up earlier, planning with everyone involved, because we have our normal folks that just live in the community and want to get to work or get to A to B, and we have these special events that we still have to endure, which is a blessing, but at the same time, we have to ensure it's streamlined where the community is still impacted but unaffected, and we're charged with ensuring the best way that we're able to do that. My job is to make sure it's done from a safety, security standpoint. So the after actions have to steady evolve, and they're living documents, and you have to breathe them, sleep, eat, and breathe what's in those, and actually incorporate it into your plans, your budgets, and things such as that, and get the buy-in from your leadership.
Great, well said. Jane, did you have a quick?
Yeah, I guess maybe provocative. Do you think we actually, so in your agency, you might be learning from your lessons, but do you think we're effective enough in communicating externally to other agencies to learn kind of collectively from that and adapt moving forward?
Well, that's just it, and maybe I didn't mention this part. Part of those 28 to 35 exercises we do, our system runs through 29 different fire departments, 19 different law enforcement agencies, including we contract with our LAPD and sheriff partners. So for us, all of our exercises, all of our after-action reports, they're already embedded into our training curriculum, our training process, because they are the ones we're expecting to respond to our system. So to answer your question, I think we're doing a great job. We can always do better, because communication you can always increase, but they already are part of our overall program.
One other thing I'll plug for LA Metro is the recent completion of the SECO playbook, which I think was a really exciting opportunity for looking across multiple agencies, to your point, because you have to be learning from each other, you have to be communicating, but finding those ways for it not to be kind of a one-off, but an ongoing check-in after an event's completed, because it's a quick period, and it's often full of exhaustion and other priorities to get back to daily life. So one quick rapid question for everyone, and then we'll have a couple minutes for Q&A. We're a couple months away from World Cup, right? It is, we're gonna know the teams in a few weeks, which I'm sure will make plenty of us very busy. Talking about building on success of each last event, when World Cup is done, what's one thing you would love to say, wow, I'm so glad we made progress there, and this helps set us up the best for 2028. Alden?
Just to be able to have a safe and secure event with there's always going to be hiccups, but to just ensure we have a safe and secure event. That's what I want to be able to, the day after the last game, be able to look back and say, similar to the World Cup, the Club Cup we just had with the 7 or 8 games, hey, we practiced how we preach, and it was a safe and secure event, and now let's move forward and start planning for the Super Bowl.
Jane?
Maybe that we anticipated the different scenarios well, and we could react and respond in the moment.
I think inclusivity is really important, and I don't think everybody who's here is going to be able to attend one of the 8 World Cup games that we have, but I think we can make the spirit of those games come to every corner of the city of Los Angeles. We'll have more to say on how we're doing that before the end of this year, but I think it's a really good opportunity for us to bring the games to other people rather than bring people to the games, and sets us up well for this Games for All ideal that we're kind of building 2028 around.
Building off of what Alden said, I'd say safe, secure, and reliable. It's one of those things where there's a major event, no one after says, wow, that electricity works so good. But if there's an issue that is anyone and everyone is talking about, so making sure it's safe, secure, and reliable.
Perfect, thank you. I think, making sure everyone has a chance to view an event in a safe and comfortable way is overall what leads to event success. So we have about 7 minutes left. I know this is an issue that a lot of people love, so wanted to see if there are any questions. Hillary.
Hi, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing and how you are responding to the needs of not only current population but visitors. And in 2028, we're going to have our very first Paralympics in Los Angeles. And I know Metro is doing a lot of exploration about how to meet the needs of people with disabilities. There are currently 1 million people in LA County with disabilities. What are you doing to help expand access and mega event approaches for stations for people with disabilities?
Well, I will first say that Reed brought up a great point as far as our Ready, Set, Go mega event playbook that Metro just released probably a couple weeks ago. So we're thinking about all of our passengers, patrons, folks that's coming from outside of Los Angeles. We have a number of different committees and planning groups, work streams that are thinking about this day in and day out. We have someone that's focused on ADA and how that is integrated in, because mobility is critical. So for us, obviously I'm in the safety and security world. However, I do see those other work streams being just as involved as I am and passionate about what I'm doing.
Emma?
Sure. From the City of LA perspective too, I want to just highlight that over the summer, the mayor signed an accessibility commitment, ensuring not just because we have the Paralympics coming, but because it's really important and critical that we make this city more accessible. Los Angeles is, I think, head and shoulders above a lot of other cities, but we could always do better. And it's imperative not just for our visitors, but for people who work and live and hang in this city day in and day out. So she signed the accessibility commitment. I'm happy to share that document, but you can look it up online and learn more about what that means. We also have an accessibility chief for the first time that's embedded into our Office of Major Events, and this person is across all of our operational planning and all of our legacy planning. So ensuring that this is embedded into everything. The mayor put together a legacy vision at the 1,000-day mark out from the Olympic opening ceremonies. Yes, we are less than 1,000 days out. And one of the 9 legacy buckets we have is accessibility. So again, this is operational, this is legacy oriented, it's streets, it's educational, it's everything. And we keep accessibility, hand in hand alongside all of the planning that we do, because we need to. It's critical. And I was, mentioning when our team walked the Dodger Parade route ahead of the parade itself, and it was great and successful, but I think the one thing that we saw that we could, very cleanly do better was at one point we were routed up a staircase. Well, that's not possible for everybody. And we need to make sure that we have options for everybody so that LA is welcoming and open for the visitors, for the people who live here, work here, etc.
Thanks for
Yeah. Another question?
This question is probably for Alden or Emma. Are there any additional exciting technologies we're testing on the public safety front in advance of the event, such as weapons detection, etc.?
I'm sure you've probably seen the news, and our board has approved for us to conduct a number of weapons detection pilots that started back last October. So for the last 14 months, we've been testing concealed as well as brandished weapon detections at our rail stations. And we just started, or we're starting this week or next week, as far as testing on 2 of our buses. Our buses is our biggest fleet, so we want to be able to see how does camera analytics work on when it comes to detecting small weapons or large weapons as far as for our bus riders. So that's one of the things, but other types of analytics software we're looking at. We also have embarked on a drone system as far as contracting, looking to bring it in-house to be able to detect folks that's in unauthorized areas. Copper dust has been extremely critical, which disrupts our rail system, which can impact the special event. So things such as camera analytics, drone systems, and there's other type of technologies that we study looking into. The great thing is we have a lot of support from our CEO and our board when it comes to innovative technology.
Yeah, I think copper theft is something everyone in Angelino every Angelino can relate to. Any additional questions? Well, we have about 2 minutes left. I see one in the back.
Hi, I'm Matt. LA28 just launched their volunteer portal for folks that are going to actually help on the weeks of the games. How can you guys get ratepayers, residents, and riders involved on a volunteer basis to supplement the effort for the city, for Metro, and even for, Edison?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying our advanced planning group, thank you for the question, our advanced planning group is planning all of the things for all of the major events, and one of the pieces of the work that team is doing is looking at creating opportunities for employees and the community to volunteer and engage, supporting, maybe watch parties, for example. Like Emma said, maybe not everyone's attending the event, but you can still participate. So we definitely have that top of mind on how to get folks involved and engaged and make it a great, fun, community-safe event.
Thank you so much for your great panel. So as you know, the event is happening in the wildfire season, and LA is prone to wildfire. What are the steps and mitigation efforts are you going to do to prevent such a thing, like such a disaster or a similar disaster that happened in LA just this year?
Yeah, and the wildfires that we had in January were devastating and significantly unfortunate. For years now, Southern California Edison's been fortifying our system to prevent the likelihood that our system is involved in the ignition of a fire. In addition to all that we're doing to install covered conductor, for example, and underground a lot of the distribution lines, we also, as an emergency kind of break glass in case of emergency, use our public safety power shutoff. Obviously, that is not good timing for major events if we need to proactively shut off power to keep the community safe. But that is, in the case of a situation where we had earlier this year and other situations where we have really high winds and it's really dry, that is a lever that we can pull to ensure safety.
Perfect. And Emma, just wanted to give you a chance I saw you go for the mic before.
Oh, sure, on the volunteer program, because I think this is really important. So yes, LA28 put out some information about their volunteer program. We'll be coordinated with them, but the city will also have their own volunteer program. This is the same model that Paris used really successfully, which is that the OCOC had a volunteer program, City of Paris had a volunteer program, and they worked in a coordinated fashion to actually get everything done. So it's not just the volunteers within the venues and right outside the venues, but it's the wayfinding volunteers, it's people, moving people through the city, through Metro, all of that, all the way, from the airport on down. And I think one of the things that's really important is that at the end of this, when everybody leaves, we're all still here. And it's really important that we, kind of bring out the civic spirit and harness that during the games. And one thing that the mayor is doing ahead of that is an initiative called Shine LA, where we're bringing people together monthly to beautify our city, to put together meals for people experiencing homelessness, doing all sorts of things to kind of spur that volunteer spirit and bring that into 2028.
Thanks so much, Emma. And I think for anyone who is in Paris, you can definitely agree with me in saying that the volunteers were the thing I remember most. So thank you for that question. Thank you to Chanel, Emma, Jane, and Alden for a fantastic hour-long discussion. And with that, have a great rest of your conference.